Thank you for staying with us. We get into our big stories now, and we start with making Accra clean. Some have said, well, it's feasible. Others have said there are going to be some troubling spots like we've seen recently in the Ayawaso North municipality. But our guest this morning joining us for this very, very important, in fact, a crucial conversation, Fred Ejakun Oduro. He is Dean Studies and Research Institute of Local Government Studies. We'll also be joined by Patrick Apoya, Executive Secretary, Coalition of NGOs in Water and Sanitation, CONIWAS for short. But before we get into these, let me just say a very good morning to our guests. Good morning to you. Right, so just to do a quick sound check. Great, great. I can hear both of you. Just hold your horses for me for now. Now, more than 60 residents in the Ayawaso North municipality have been summoned for failing to clean their immediate environs. Municipal Chief Executive for Ayawaso North, Zachariah Mohammed, led a group of sanitation officers to inspect homes and shops around the timber market in Accra Newtown, notorious for some of these things. Now, the operation was a pilot of the yet-to-be fully implemented Operation Clean Your Frontage initiative. My colleague Michael Ashale was there and gives us this report.
In the timber market in Accra Newtown, the chief executive of the Ayawaso North municipality, Zachariah Mohammed Aminu, and a team of environmental health inspectors checked the immediate environs of some vendors in the market.
Is he not the one? No, this one. Who was shouting with you and this man? That's not why the lady said if he doesn't clean, we'll take him. Yes, sir. I can I'm reporting. I got some problem. Well, I can get a some. But who was out? This is some number. You know what's happening. He was a no matter who you are. Not even me. It's a number and come. Serki the country, brother, and us. But we don't fight them. But more of this will come. More of this will come. So anytime something for you feel, just pick it. So quickly mobilize your boys to clean here right now. Mobilize your boys right now. I'm here. I'm standing. No problem. Mobilize to pick it right now. Right now. Right now. Mobilize everybody right now. Muzo. Take right now. I will take action against you. Immediately abatement. No, what said that if they don't clean, we take it. So I beg,
I don't know ultimately. Sometimes you know, unya watchma. Ube ujuma. Until sometimes you go for prayers before you come back. Obiedi waja anyama. Ubetma was a boss. Ni na gugo. Sawati asiye. Ube kotoni jana. Ube tian Indiano so. Wedidi. Sometimes ube kwa kofrenya ube bano na ura ho. So who feel like ube ya de na wide na wasisa. What's that into? But I to say you need time on into. And it's Saturdays. Every Saturday yeah cleaning wa. Into ube say Monday or Tuesday. But always but that's been about 3 times. Almost all the baby, you the baby and famba. Intia you kotoku. You kotoku. Kotoku ne bi wo. Besa miensa. E ba akoso we tira ya. Intia ya nwura ne ba na ya sai na de agum. Inti se ka ne ba na ya de. Na de ama. Intia order for about 2 and fambre. Me akasa me ba of municipal or my baby saba still.
Shop owners who failed to clean their drains were also issued summons.
Yeah, it's dirty. So it's part of his work. It's part of his frontage to clean it. Yeah, it must be his duty. Yes, so he has to clean it. It's not about MPP and DC here, no. At all.
And where's the person?
He's not in, but we'll look for him. Once we have said he's having notice. Yes, I think he has been given a notice. So he has to comply.
Okay, and the notice is to what effect? What are they supposed to do?
They are supposed to clean it. Yes, every drain in front of your house or store is part of what? Your frontage. You have up to the middle of the road to clean. From this side, up to the middle here. From that point to this side, is the duty of the household or the store owner to clean it, including the drainage. And this side to is part of what? This place. They are supposed to clean it. So no one has no right to say, oh, I won't clean it. No. Whoever dares the law will take its course. Yes, he must not dare the law. That because I'm A and B, so nobody's above the law, not even my good self.
What's the worst that they could be facing if they fail to do it?
Imprisonment. Yes, that's the worst.
Some of the residents who were issued summons were unhappy with the way the Operation Clean Your Frontage policy was being implemented. Alhaji Sani is one of them.
I like the attempt of trying to sanitize the area. That is the good way to move. But here is an area, it's a settlers and everybody is in. So no, law is law, yeah. So I want them, as what we want is they should give us some rules and regulations that we use. So if I see somebody putting it, I will, yes. So they should let everybody put net, joint by joint. It is better for us.
Another resident, Abdul Latif, identified that the asphalt on the road covers some of the metal covers on the drains, making those parts unreachable. He says they cannot be faulted for an engineering error.
It's the simple things. The day they come to lay this quota, we are telling these people that they shouldn't seal the bath, because every time when we are commoting the gutter, you used to remove this iron, then we clear the gutter. They didn't listen to us. Now you block this thing. How can we remove this thing? And we need the MC the help. This gutter is too choked. The pressure here is too much. They should come and cut this gutter to join this lane, because this lane is empty when there is a rain. We are trying to explain it for them, but they don't want to listen. They are giving us pressure. And this gutter, we are the one who is commoting every time. Even though this is my big brother, every time.
So you think it's not fair to...
It's not fair to us. Because all the rubbish will come from up there, come here.
Some shops built on pathways, like this motorcycle repair shop, were ordered to close. TMC said it will be pulled down.
We are going to close the shop permanently, not even temporarily, permanently. And look at it. You don't have that right to put a structure over a drain. It's not allowed. This is even beyond Operation Clean Your Frontage. This is a criminal offense. Yeah, so I've called in the police. I've called in the police to come and arrest.
So that is the latest on the back of the Operation Clean Your Frontage in the Ayawaso North municipality, where some people are simply not in compliance with the directives. Mind you, in October last year, we had these developments. We were told that it was kicking in 1 year imprisonment terms for those who would flout the directive. There was the suggestion to the AG that some of this be waived to community service and all of that. But let's get to our guests now who will be delineating the matters for us. Patrick Apoya, I'll start with you. You are Executive Secretary, Coalition of NGOs in Water and Sanitation. How would you candidly assess water and sanitation, or let's focus more on the sanitation situation in the country currently? And I pose that question linking it to the SDG requirements for Ghana, what we are aiming at, and how far we've come. How would you assess our current sanitation situation across the country and in the Greater Accra region?
Well, Ghana, I think we are not new to the chronic sanitation situation that we are facing as a country. And as far as the SDGs are concerned, Ghana, even though currently we are measuring by the status of access to toilets, that's the standard measure for the SDGs. Right. We are just 30% if you are talking about those who have access to a clean toilet. But when it comes to solid waste, of course, it is our own measure of how clean our city is that we will work with now. And that is something that, by our own assessment, it is below an average standard of cleanliness. The government, when it came to power in 2017, actually took steps to also deal with the solid waste menace, which is the one that everybody is affected on a daily basis, by declaring that Accra will be the cleanest city in Africa. Of course, everybody doubted if it was going to be possible, and now we know it was not possible. But the initiative that we are seeing today
did you just say, Patrick, just to go back, did you just say that now we know it is not possible, or it wasn't possible?
Now we know. No, it said 4 years. 4 years have passed. That was never possible. Today, as we said, Accra is not the greatest and the cleanest city in Africa. But it is very possible to make Accra the cleanest city in Africa. Right. If the political will is there, if the resources are provided, if the right communication strategies to citizenry towards behavior change is implemented, and the courts, that's the enforcement agencies, also play their role, of course, backed with financing. This will require some time, whether it is 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, 10 years, that's another question, but it is very possible to make Accra the cleanest city. So whatever interventions that are being planned now, and starting from the Greater Accra region, we think it is in the very right direction. Most often, initiatives like this fail because there's no political will. If the government and the public officers who are the normal employees of the assembly were to do this initiative, but we would have had calls from the minister, from MPs intervening and saying, oh, these are my people, don't touch them.
Right.
But once this initiative is come from the regional minister himself and from government at that high level, that is a very positive step for now. That's just my initial comment. We'll go deep into the policy itself as the discussion goes.
Why do you feel we've come back to this point? And as late as October last year, we had to roll out this initiative. Over the years, we've seen how much it has cost us in terms of health, in terms of open defecation and all of that when it comes to sanitation and management or access to water. But I pose the question from the standpoint of the plethora of initiatives we've had over the years. This is not the first. We've had so many of them. They all die natural deaths because we start so well, and in the end, I mean, the filth, I guess, just swallows all of us. We had the monthly cleanup thing. It didn't amount to much. We've had different initiatives even in this Fourth Republic. Why do we keep ending up here? And maybe what do you think was successful in the days of Saman decades ago, when the town councils were managing this and they would come around, if your environs were not properly cleaned, you would face the consequences? What has changed?
Many things have changed. First and foremost, the approaches that we have always used is pick and leave. And it is always driven by the enthusiasm of a particular leader. And when that leader it's not driven by the institutions themselves, because the institutions are very weak, they are not strong, they are not resourced. Most often they are being sidelined. But when an enthusiastic leader comes in, let's say a minister or a DC or MC, it will fly as long as that minister is in power or is at post, and making sure that the right resources are going to the initiative. As long as the person leaves and somebody else comes and thinks that this is not my priority, it is pushed aside. And if you look at the days of the Sama, it was the institutions that were driving it, not like a political personality or an individual. And for that matter, even if you leave, any person coming, you must follow the system, because that's how the system has been designed.
Right.
And fortunately too, there was law and order. We started with the law. So everybody knew that if I don't obey the law, these are the outright consequences. You were never going to get a call from an MP, an assemblyman, a chief to intervene on your behalf. Unfortunately for us, the democracy that you are practicing also came with its problems. This is more or less like competitive clientelism, where politicians are competing for votes.
Right.
And to compete for votes, you have to bend back to meet your citizens' or your voters' requirements or needs. And one of them will be, please, my brother has been arrested, I want you to do something. Naturally, you are up to do something because you stand the risk of being voted out. It's one of the consequences, the negative consequences to our democracy, but we have to figure out how to deal with it. And I think this is the beginning of seeing how to deal with it. As I talk, if it is left the way it is, led by the regional minister's enthusiasm, it will die when the minister leaves office. Even if it is not a change of government, another MPP minister comes and that's not really how he or she understands the priority, it's going to die. But if the president is able to anchor this within the ministry, the same support, the same resources flowing in, then whether a minister changes or doesn't change, the policy is going to be sustained. Maybe for once, there are going to be difficulties in the beginning. Civilian lives will be dislocated in the beginning. But when it comes to the national interest, we just have to figure out how to minimize those impacts, explain more to the citizenry, get a lot of effort to go into explaining to people why they should comply rather than focusing on the punishment. But of course, the punishment should never be downplayed. That is the only way we can move forward with a policy like this.
Later on, I'll come back to you on the bit about punishment, whether the one-year thing or community service would suffice. But let me now get to Fred Ejako-Oduro, who is Dean, Studies and Research, Institute of Local Government Studies. Okay, so Fred hasn't joined us yet. So maybe I should just get to that point I was about to make. The proposal was that if you flouted the rule, per what the regional minister, Henry Quartey, told us, the penalty would be a stiff one, 1 year in the can, if you like, imprisonment. Some suggested that the Attorney General should be approached and that we should also consider community service. You've already touched on the bit about stiffness of the penalties and how that would impact the situation. What is your take on prison terms or, community service, and what else do you feel could be factored in to let people feel the pinch but not necessarily have them? I mean, our prisons are full, for example. What is your thinking on this?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately here, I'm tempering my personal biases with what I feel should be the right thing. I'm personally not a fan of prisons, and an initiative like this is very expensive to finance. And if you look at the cost of inflows that goes into sanitation from the Minister of Finance, in fact, Minister of Finance doesn't even look at sanitation as a priority. It's always the lowest allocation in terms of budgetary allocation to the sector. Now, if you look at punishment, I would rather prefer a financial charge, and that should be channeled to finance this initiative. I don't see why you should go and bundle somebody, leave the person in the prison for I'm not saying sanitation offense is not an offense, but there are countries that when you break a traffic rule, nobody sends you to prison. There's a financial charge that goes straight to your inbox. You go, you cross the traffic light, this is the penalty, the financial penalty that goes with it. You go to the court, you pay. And a lot of money comes to their coffers through that. I think this is one that we can start with, that don't even think about prison. Community service is good, but I would just limit it to financial penalty. And at worst, you do the community service if the person is unable to afford the financial. But the financial should be the emphasis, with the aim of plowing the proceeds back into financing this scheme. It's a very expensive scheme. The task force that we are talking about, 3,500 for Greater Accra alone, is not coming from the existing staff that we have. There are people who have to be employed and to be paid. I'll tell you that, watch, next budget allocation, you will see what finance ministry will do. They will just do as if everybody has to be paid two cedis per month. If you look at what budget that they can get. That is my take on the nature of the punishment that should go with this initiative.
So for you, it is clear that any prison term would be overkill. I mean, it would be out of place.
Yeah, that would be an overkill. Except in the case of a repeat offender. A repeat offender who repeatedly just flouts the law because some people want to show muzzle. Who are they? For me. But if you do not, if for some reason it's just a simple mistake that you offend a second time, it's not enough. But there are people who clearly just intentionally want to test the system and want to show that they too they can challenge the law. Such people, I don't mind if you talk about a prison sentence, but ordinarily, I don't think a prison term is the best way to go.
Let's go back to a point you made a short while ago. I just had to pin you down on the bit about penalties because you had brought it up. But you also made mention of a crucial point, and it has to do with the fact that a lot of the time it is about political will. We have someone start the initiative, like we've had Henry Quartey come through and say, let's make Accra, clean, let's make Accra great, let's do this, let's do that. And if that person, let's say he is, at some point, we change the regional minister, then it appears that it's just a long road downhill, and that is it. What do you think in terms of institutions, and this is back to you, Mr. Apoya, what do you think in terms of institutions we can do to prevent this, even before I move on to Fred?
Institutionally, fortunately, the sector has identified that gap. That an initiative like this, the ministry itself as a ministry doesn't implement things. It has to implement them through the local government authorities. And unlike water, where you have a technical institution in between the ministry and the consumers and the assemblies, which is Ghana Water Company Limited, and then in rural water sector, we have Community Water and Sanitation Agency between the ministry and the assemblies. Sanitation, we don't have any institution, that technical institution that anchors sanitation drive. And fortunately, the minister now is pursuing the issue of the National Sanitation Authority. If the National Sanitation Authority were in place, and then an initiative like this were to be anchored on it, because it is an authority, it is not a ministry, it is not an implementing agency. It is just the right institution to drive something like this, to be able to curtail that problem of change of a leader. But without an institution like the National Sanitation Authority, I regrettably will say that it is very difficult to sustain it if we get a new minister coming in who doesn't necessarily share this enthusiasm or this vision or this goal. So the National Sanitation Authority is the way to sustain this.
Okay. Important point made. Let me move on to Fred Ejaku-Odro, Dean of Studies and Research, Institute of Local Government Studies. Mr. Ejaku-Odro, thank you so much for joining the conversation.
Thank you.
Okay. So where I'd like to start off with you, there's quite a lot that we've already made mention of, but very quickly, why do you feel we seem to be having this back and forth, this pendulating saga where when it comes to sanitation, we get it right briefly, then we come back, we get it right briefly, and then it tapers off. And in terms of local governance systems, where exactly are we getting it wrong so that even in terms of this latest initiative, Operation Clean Your Frontage, if we don't tackle, we're going to get it wrong again? I want you to identify, why are we back here? And what are the sore points in local government so that moving forward, we can address them and ensure the success of Operation Clean Your Frontage? Let's start from there.
I'll put them down to three key things. First and foremost is the regulatory framework. That is, then I will talk, I think there's also the financial bit to it. And then the third point is education. I mean, if we start from the regulatory framework, my view is that currently people seem to be confused as to who is responsible. The local assemblies are responsible for environmental sanitation. That is stated clearly in law. When it comes to waste management, it is the responsibility of the assembly. For which reason, if we fail to recognize this, indeed, we may continuously talk about a national body and all that, but then the law gives those powers to the assembly. So we need to support the assemblies to perform this function. Unfortunately, part of the problem the assemblies are facing, or they themselves have failed to do clearly, is to pass the prescribed bylaws to support how they are going to go about ensuring that people keep their environments clean. By law, under the local governance, the assemblies have the power to pass bylaws. Some of the assemblies don't have these bylaws. They've not giving them out to the various courts in their districts for enforcement. But the bylaws, when they are passed, must go through certain processes, including the Gazette process, which seems to be a challenge for some assemblies. I think we need to get this fixed. I'm trusting the ministries. And here, that is where sometimes the challenge comes from. Because we do have a new ministry or a ministry responsible for sanitation, part of the time we can't collaborate between the Ministry of Local Government and the Ministry for Water and Sanitation. I am hoping there can be a collaboration between the two ministries to support the assemblies to pass their various bylaws that will make it enforceable. Yes, the law, assemblies have got the power to pass bylaws that can even imprison people. Maybe we don't want to look at imprisonment as the first step, but fines are there. Community sentencing must also be considered in some of these things. So that will be for the regulatory side. Then there is also the financial side. For me, I think the assemblies don't have enough resources. Some of the assemblies, particularly if you look at the municipalities, the assemblies in the urban areas, they spend too much of their resources on waste management and sanitation issues. I think the assemblies must be supported in terms of their finances. And then they must also have adequate controls.
Ejakodro, how do we do that? When you say they must be supported in terms of their finances, I mean, we're fully aware of the financial constraints that government is facing. I think the budget for 2022 clearly evinces that, the whole discussion about the e-levy and all of that. So when it comes down to local government, how exactly do they manage that? Must the municipalities, the MMDAs themselves, how do they generate this in IGFs? I mean, give us some idea. How do you
the IGF comes into play. That's a critical part of it. I think that, for instance, the regulation of sanitation and waste management must be handled solely by the assemblies in their areas of jurisdiction. They must lead the process. Well, when it comes to charging for waste management in the district, the assembly must be seen to be leading, to bringing the citizens or I mean, in this case, we're talking about those who generate the waste and those who must manage the waste. The assembly should be the lead in this so that the assembly can lead a fee fixing. For instance, if we have private sector operators in an area, the assembly must lead in deciding how much should be charged. And when I talk about support to the assemblies, when we generate waste in an environment, I saw one of the clips you were showing earlier on, where people were claiming that, well, they are sellers, they go to pray. So waste is generated only when they go out to pray. I think the assembly must be given the power that if you don't do it and we have to do it, we must surcharge you for some of these things. And if the private sector is coming into play, the assembly must lead the process in saying that these are the fees we are setting for the private sector who are supporting some of these things. Then the third leg that I pointed out, that's about education. We have very poor sanitation mindset in this country. People can just drop things around and they will tell you, oh, the common thing they say, there's Zoom line to come and sweep. This mindset should stop because the waste we are talking about are generated by us. Nobody comes to generate it. And we should understand that it costs so much in terms of finances and even the health implication. We need to let people be aware of some of these things. And we as citizens must also support the policing of environmental pollution because people do all sorts of things without regard to the effect on all of us. So these are the key things that I think we must be doing. But I think if we need to resource any institution, it should be the assembly. We were talking about the Nsaman period. There were no national institutions to spearhead this. It was the then city councils that were leading the Nsaman. How come that today that we have the laws and then today that we have all the necessary resources to overcome some of these things. This is when we are failing to allow some of these key institutions to perform. The laws are there. I don't think we need any new institutions. I think what we need is to empower the assemblies to perform their duties. The functions are already assigned to them in law. The key things is to give them every needed support, whether it's about regulation, whether it's about financing, whether it's to support them in the education, whatever it takes. The assemblies can best do this. If we bring in national institutions, we will be creating just another unnecessary, another bureaucratic institution that may be sitting in Accra and not be aware of what is going on in Secondary, Takoradi, Tamale, or Kumasi. We need the assemblies that are close to the issues to be empowered to do this, and they can do it. How difficult is it to send? I mean, look at the clip you were showing us. Just one day, and people are running all over the place. It is now that people are giving us excuses as to why the environments are dirty. Let the Nsaman work. And it's similar to what the old Nsaman was working. You go around, if your environment is dirty, you are sent to court. People fear that more than anything. So let us use that effectively. And I think we can overcome part of the challenge.
Well, what you said about Zoom Lion brought to mind, because I recall at the time Dr. Joseph Japong of the Jospong Group made mention of the fact that there must be public-private partnership on this matter. And at the time, I don't know whether this has been done, because there was a promise of every, each of these MMDAs getting some 85 compactors and about 1,000 tricycles to support the campaign. I don't know whether that has been done, but that would be a crucial initiative. But I want to find out, in the Greater Accra region, the 29 MMDAs here, we just saw the footage from the Ayawaso North municipality where people are effectively resisting the activities of officials to whip them in line. What are your expectations of these MMDAs? Do you feel if we are able to do this properly, we'll get to that point where Accra actually fits into the plan of becoming the cleanest city in Africa? Maybe, what are your expectations in terms of timelines?
Well, I think the way to go is this system of Clean Your Frontage. When we were kids, we were taught right in the corner where you are. If all of us were doing the little things about our own little corners, ensuring that our immediate surroundings are neat, it boils down to the whole city becoming neater. Whenever you are starting any system, for a long time, we stopped doing some of these things. And people assume they can do whatever they want. That is why I'm calling for education. There's a need for public education. That one we cannot do without. But then, the effective policing of this, if it needs, yes, that brings about the issue of the police. If it means bringing in the police at this stage when we are starting this process to support the key enforcers, so be it, so that we can prosecute individuals. When people see that now the system has changed, there's a new paradigm. If you just allow your environment to go very dirty, you will get into trouble. People will begin to take care of their own environments. And then we will also, as citizens, police our immediate environment. And as time goes on, when people have become aware that this is the system going on, we wouldn't need a police again. People will be running around to keep the environment clean when they see the sanitation officers coming around. So we should start at this point. There must be education, there must be enforcement, and then we also need the financial wherewithal to support the process so that it doesn't become a 9-day wonder. Indeed, Mr. Apoya made a point about the fear that if we should lose the regional minister today, if he should leave that office, we stand the chance of losing it out. Yes, that is a sure issue that we can look at, but then we need to build strong institutions.
Right.
That is why we don't need to rely on individuals to get things done. Why are the assemblies failing to perform this task? Even before the regional minister came into office, all the laws I'm talking about, all the regulations have always been in existence. Why is it that the assemblies are failing to just apply these rules? That is why the question is, we need to assess chief executives and coordinating directors based on some of these key indicators. We've allowed people to get away literally with murder in this country. People are not performing the functions they are assigned to perform. So let us put people to task. Let us ask the environmental sanitation officers what they do daily, that we still find our city so filthy. If we are able to keep them on their toes, I think we can get the work done.
Right.
We don't need new laws. We don't need new institutions.
Right. Thank you so much. Just to be fair, I'm going to give the final bite to Patrick, and then we shall bring a close to this conversation. And Patrick, it has to do with what other things we can do. So we've spoken about the different angles, financial and all of that. But in terms of manpower, we were told that some 3,500 youth would be recruited. They would undergo rigorous training. And per what the Greater Accra Regional Minister said, and I'm quoting him, they would be given the required resources to deliver, and we expect them to exhibit the normal military discipline in all their activities. The numbers we are channeling into the Greater Accra region and this designation, are you encouraged by them? Do you think that is what it will take to achieve the results we seek?
Yes, in my opinion, the numbers are encouraging. The resources that need to back their continued sustenance is what I am a bit doubtful of. But before I even go far, permit me to just use 1 minute to clear a misconception that my colleague created for the sake of your viewers. There's a seeming turf war between assemblies and national institutions, but that doesn't even come in at all. The debate about who is responsible, who should do it, that debate passed decades ago. There's no question about the mandate of the assembly. What we are saying is that the institution that will support the assemblies to do what they have been mandated to do in law is that institution which is lacking. And that is why it took the regional minister to bring this. And we are saying a national sanitation authority is not coming to implement. It's coming to support the assemblies technically, keeping them on their feet, mobilizing additional resources to give them to do their work. So that is just to clarify, to clear the air, so that we don't downplay a very important national discussion that is going on because of a misconception that somebody is coming to take the work of assemblies.
Right.
Having said that, I think the apart from the financing, he also emphasized the issue of education. But what is also an important angle is to see now how to rope in the traditional authority angle into this. What role will non-state actors also play? What role will organized groups also play? So that at the end of the day, it becomes a very complete national movement that everybody buys into. It's a very good start, but we can take time to figure out how the different roles by these different actors can all fit into it for us to drive the agenda successfully.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for making the time to join us. Patrick Apoya, Executive Secretary, Coalition of NGOs in Water and Sanitation, and of course, Fred Ejakun Odro, Dean, Studies and Research, Institute of Local Government Studies. Thank you, and top of the morning to you. So we take a bit of a breather here, and when we return, it's our second major big story. It has to do with the carnage on our roads and how to get out of this entire quagmire. That's up next on The AM Show.